Am I the a-hole for screaming at my parents and banning them from any contact with my son after they punished him with no dinner? My wife and I have a 9-year-old son. Sometimes on weekends our work schedules overlap, and my parents are happy to take him for a few hours those days. Last weekend they would have had to keep him late, so they offered to just watch him overnight. That was all fine. They've done that before, so we didn't think anything of it. The next morning my wife and I went to pick him up, and he looked like he hadn't slept all night. I tried to ask him what was up, but he just wanted out of there. So my wife took him to the car. I asked what was up, and my dad said that they didn't feed him the night before. I asked what he meant by that, and he said that my son said the F word when he dropped something. So as punishment, they didn't give him dinner. I went out for a second to tell my wife to stay there with my son, and went back inside and unloaded on them. They used that on my sister and I growing up. I never got in trouble much as a kid, but my sister was the classic teen rebel, and that was the classic lazy parenting they used on her. She was 17 and would hide food in her room because she wasn't sure if failing a test or talking back would get her punished. Now she's depressed and starves herself every time she feels bad because she thinks she doesn't deserve to eat. I was in there almost an hour. I called them crappy parents, called my dad every swear word known to man. My mother told me I was being immature and said it wouldn't kill him to miss one meal, so I called her the C word too. By the end of it, I was beet red, my mother was sobbing, and my dad told me to get out. I was so angry. I called or texted most of the family and told them what they did, and now everyone is angry at each other. My dad's mom even told him how ashamed she is. She grew up poor, and her parents would never do that, but the family is split on it. I told them that as far as I care, those people are neither my parents nor my children's grandparents anymore, and they should get used to that idea because they'll never see their grandkids again. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I want to say that maybe you could have handled it better, but no, not really. I'm glad you've decided to keep them away from your son. This was extreme. Even for a nuclear option, this was big. Absolutely justified that OP should never leave his child with them again. And they are definitely crappy if not abusive parents. But a full hour of cursing them out? Is the family split about the tactic or about OP's reaction? I will tentatively go with not the a-hole too, but OP definitely could have just left when he went out to talk to his wife. Or anything smaller than an hour-long scream fest that the people waiting outside of the car probably caught some of it too. It sounds like OP had a lot of his own upbringing that needed to be unloaded. I'm finding it hard to say anything but not the a-hole. I agree with you. I have to wonder what else happened that wasn't mentioned here, because it definitely reads like it was years and years of being unloaded. My dad had a very similar moment with my grandparents when I was a kid, but last straw was over a lot of things that happened at once. Not the a-hole. My friend, you did the right thing by standing up for your son. But you clearly need to get some help based on this reaction. I highly recommend you find a therapist who deals with trauma history because what you are describing seems like an utter lack of control on your part, and you cannot afford to be having those reactions. You never know what might trigger you. It sounds like a lifetime of bottled-up resentment toward their parents finally spilled over. I think OP definitely needs therapy for the parent issues, but I'm not going to judge him for losing control under the circumstances we are aware of. Next story. Am I the a-hole for blowing up at my husband for sharing pictures of our daughter's birthday celebration, resulting in my family finding out about it? Ever since my brother passed away at the age of 17 on his birthday, my family decided to never celebrate birthdays ever again. It was mom and dad's decision, but because of how much the family loved my brother, extended family decided to do the same and stand in agreement with this decision. My husband would refuse to follow this decision though and kept celebrating his birthday. Me and the family didn't say a thing about it since he's not blood family. But when I first got pregnant, the argument about celebrating our daughter's birthdays occurred. My family advised me to just not celebrate her birthday since she's a baby and won't even remember anyway. I agreed, but my husband threw a fit and insisted that we celebrate our daughter's first birthday. I caved in eventually, but told him we'd have a small, secret celebration so that my family wouldn't find out. And he agreed. The next day, I got a call from mom, and she was so upset, saying that my word meant nothing and that I have no respect for my brother's memory nor the family. I asked what she meant, and she told me she saw the birthday party pictures my husband posted on social media. I was too shocked to even argue. I hung up and went straight to my husband to confront him about it. He got defensive and said that he didn't need my permission to post pictures and that I wanted to show his family the birthday celebration pictures, since I insisted we have a small, secret party and exclude them. I explained to him how this made me look bad and a liar to my family, but he said they can get over it and called my mom snobby. I blew up at him, and we had a huge fight about it. He started sulking later and said I ruined the memory of our daughter's first birthday for him and verbally mistreated him with how I lashed out. But I solely did it out of frustration, knowing that what happened caused a massive problem between me and family. Now he's expecting an apology from me. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole and your family. This is out of control. That is an insane thing to agree to concerning people who weren't even born at the time. Your children and husband did not consent to this. It honestly sounds like your family might need some therapy all around. It is sad someone died, but a living should not have to pay a price for it every year. Birthdays are about celebrating the life of the person born that day, not about the death of a person born a different day. I bet your brother would be appalled this was his legacy, telling everyone that their lives isn't as important as his. You do look bad, and you are a liar. You should have stood up and said, "We're celebrating the life of my daughter," to your family. Go apologize to your husband. I feel like this would make a child resent the memory of their uncle more than anything. Right? This is so disrespectful to that young man who passed away. If I found out my memory was being used and excused to deprive my family, and literal babies, of joy and celebrations and birthdays, I would hunt the heck out of everyone. You're the a-hole, and so is your birth family. Whole generations should not be made to mourn someone they've never seen, and neither should it be binding on the descendant's brother-in-law or niece. I'd suggest you tell your family you're finally done mourning your brother. Your daughter is entitled to have her birthday celebrated. I can just picture in 5 years the lovely conversation you'll have. I know your schoolmates have birthday parties, birthday cakes, and birthday gifts, and you can't have one. That's because your uncle's dead. Yikes. It's time to stop the madness. You're the a-hole so hard. So any kids you have are never ever allowed birthdays because your brother died? Your family all need counseling. It reminds me of a political dictator's dying wish. It's absurd. Except I strongly doubt the brother would want this. Imagine knowing your family and their future families never celebrated another birthday. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting my daughter an apartment versus letting her move back in? My 45 female daughter, Mallory, 24 female, got married 3 years ago, and she has 2 children, 2 and 6 months. Recently, her husband revealed he's been cheating on her and is leaving her for another woman. They rent a house, but due to my daughter having no credit at the time of moving in, only his name is on the lease, and he is giving her 30 days to move out. Mallory is understandably distraught. I've been doing all I can to comfort her. She asked if she could move in with me, explaining she'd have the kids every other week. She assured me she isn't looking for childcare, as both kids are in daycare. She offered to pay rent and chip in on groceries. Now, I have always raised my kids to be independent. I didn't kick them out at 18, but I did encourage them to start doing things on their own. Mallory moved out at 19, moving in with her soon-to-be ex. My sons are in college, and plan to move out after graduating from college. They're both freshmen at the same university. I asked Mallory how her credit score was. She said she could reasonably rent, so I offered to pay first month, last month, and a deposit, along with 6 months' rent. She said it's not about the money. She's not wealthy by any means, but she does well for herself. And her ex-husband is already agreeing to give her money weekly, even before they go to court. She just wants emotional support. I told her I could do that with her living in her own place. She started to cry and said she just needs her mom right now. But I told her she was going to be okay. Now my sons are angry with me. They pointed out I have plenty of room, that Mallory has offered to pay rent. She's also not the type to shrug off responsibility of the kids, and the toddler is well behaved. To me, that doesn't matter, and they called me heartless. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. This is difficult for me, because you are reasonably helping your child out. The problem for me is this is less about them needing a space to live and more about them needing you. For all intents and purposes, you are pushing your child away. Anytime I needed help like this, my mother was there to catch me. I live with my mother right now because she's in her late 60s and she was lonely living alone. I still managed to be an independent adult while living with my mother. I have friends. I go to work. I often leave to hang out with other people. I also drive my mother around and run errands for her as she needs, as well as stuff like cutting the grass and clearing the snow. I personally feel like you are being heartless. It's gonna be funny when you need your kids and they blow you off. You're the a-hole. Right? I have a feeling that they will be telling her, as they drop her off at the nursing facility, that living with them would be a step backwards and would compromise her independence. Yes, Opie's shooting herself in the foot because daughters usually are the ones left to take care of parents, especially the mother. Many sons do step up too, but my experience has seen daughters doing it more. You're the a-hole. This might be an unpopular opinion, and yes, you are 100% entitled to your own space and boundaries, but your daughter is asking for help. She even specified that she wants emotional help. Her husband just admitted to having an affair and is leaving her and appending her life and the lives of their 2 small children. Her entire world has just flipped upside down. She now has to readjust her entire life, her kids' lives, and if their youngest is only 6 months old, do all of it while still in postpartum time frame, which means extra hormones, baby brain, and everything else that comes with having a baby at home. If you want your boundaries, give her a time frame, like 3 to 6 months to start sorting herself out. But the way you say you handle this makes you sound heartless. Yeah, this is maybe reading way too much into the situation, but if she wasn't being gently but consistently pushed out of the nest, maybe she wouldn't have needed to shack up with a loser. You had kids. It's an obligation for life. Hopefully, she takes her commitment to her children's mental well-being more seriously than her mother ever has. My immediate thought upon reading this is that no wonder the marriage failed. They moved in together at 19. Undoubtedly, that's the mom pressuring her to find somewhere else to live. Really, really sad for her. I just need my mom. No. Soon you'll be asking where your relationship went wrong and wishing she would come visit. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not charging my son rent on a home he partially owns? My oldest son, 24, is not my wife's biological child and is my child with my late wife. My late wife and I bought a 3-bedroom house when we got married. When I remarried, my current wife moved into this house with me, but I never put her name on the deed. The house was only in my name. My wife and I ended up having several children and needing to move into a bigger house. When we bought our new home, she wanted me to sell the old one. I said no, that this home was something my late wife and I purchased with the hope of one day passing on to our son, so I would make it a rental property instead. That was one of the biggest fights we ever had. She insisted we compromise, but I refused to do so. When my son graduated from college, I put his name on the deed to the house with mine, which was another fight, but I felt he was the appropriate inheritor to his mother's share. I didn't share any of the rental income with him though, as I was still paying all the taxes and insurance. At this point, the mortgage is paid off. I net over $2,000 a month from this house, which goes into the household budget. My son just got engaged and wants to move into the house after he marries his fiancée. He suggested to pay half the rent and eventually buy out my share of the house. I told my son I agreed to his plan of saving up to buy out my share, but instead of paying rent, he should just take over the taxes and insurance, and we agreed to this. My wife is livid and says I'm a massive a-hole for dramatically decreasing our household income without consulting her. She likened my decision to financial abuse. I suggested we downsize to a smaller house now that our oldest 2 kids are leaving the nest, and we can rent out the larger one and be in the same situation as before, owning 2 homes and getting rental income from one. But she called me a selfish prick and won't speak to me now. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your son's name is on the title. You have zero right to charge him any form of rent. He is an equal owner to you at this point. His paying the taxes and insurance is reasonable since he is using the home as a primary residence, but he is an equal owner and thus has equal right to use of the property. Frankly, he should have been getting half of the rental income as soon as his name was on the property. Payment for you denying him use of what was now joint property. But what's done is done. Your wife is mad because the household is losing the rental income. But honestly, tough. It sure as heck isn't financial abuse. And I suspect she's just angry because you dared to give a damn about your son when he's not one of her children. For the folks talking about, oh no, you can charge rent, please look into what circumstances actually entitle one owner to charge another rent. Then reread a post. Nowhere does the father say that the son is taking exclusive possession of the property while he is moving in. Nowhere does the father say, and he is banning me from entry or use of the property. In fact, the father stated that he voluntarily got another home and has just been renting out the first house. Without that forced exclusivity, things like occupational rent, meaning paid for exclusive use rights when a person with an ownership interest is involuntarily barred from it, do not apply. Generally, the situations where one owner would need to pay the other rent require a court order. They are not applicable for this exact situation. Especially since he offered a solution that would generate rental income again, downsize and rent out the house they currently live in. So, it seems like she is mad that he cares about his child that isn't hers. A father that remarries plus had more kids acknowledges the older son. You are a rare species, OB. Not the whole. Maybe rare on the sub, but we only hear about the drama llamas. Not the whole. Your wife is. She's trying to seize property from your son, even though he's the rightful inheritor. She wouldn't do this if it were her biological child. Needless to say, your wife just doesn't care for him. Also, you clearly stated that you already own a large house, and since your kids are moving out, you can move and rent out that house, which will probably bring in more profit. You're being reasonable while she's acting selfish.